Hello and welcome to the Huntsman World Senior Games Active Life. My name is Kyle Case, and I'll be your host on this amazing journey as we attempt to help you get the most out of your life. Joining me in the studio today are my co-hosts, Andy Groft. Andy, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Kyle.
Good. Thanks for being here with us. And Jeff Harding.
Hey, Kyle. How you doing?
Great, Jeff. Again, thanks for being with us. Andy and Jeff both are part of the full-time executive staff at the Huntsman World Senior Games. Well, this is exciting, guys.
It is. It's great. This is going to be a lot of fun.
This is our inaugural show, the first ever. And we've got big plans for our little show. Over the next couple of weeks and months, we're going to be talking with you about ways to stay active and healthy. We're going to hear from industry experts on how to exercise and correctly train for competition. We'll talk with athletes about their experiences, their high highs and their low lows, and maybe most importantly, how they battled through them. And we might even have a former Olympian or two along the way sharing their experiences.
Wow, that's going to be great.
It's awesome.
It is exciting. But today, to kick it all off, we thought we would focus on the Huntsman World Senior Games itself. Today we're doing all games all the time.
So, Kyle, why don't you tell us how the games got started?
That is exactly where I would like to start, just to get us started off and to get us going. Let's talk a little bit about how the games got to where they are, and how the games happened. In 1987, a gentleman by the name of John Morgan and some of his friends and his wife were sitting around a table. He was the owner of the St. George Hilton at the time. And they were sitting around the table just visiting about ideas on how they could get people to come to St. George, and for him at least at that time, maybe most importantly, stay in his hotel. And they were brainstorming and throwing ideas around and just trying to come up with something. And they kind of stumbled upon this idea of a senior athletic event. And that was the noodle, if you will, that stuck to the wall. And from there, they just got to work. And they got the city involved, the city council involved. They started visiting with their friends outside of the area, and come October of 1987, they hosted the very first Huntsman World Senior Games. They offered a handful of sports, about 6 or 7 sports, and they had about 178 athletes just to get things going.
Wow. Only 178 that first year.
And here we are, 27 games later. And it has become the largest annual multi-sport event in the entire world for athletes 50 and over. It's hard to believe it has such humble beginnings.
Why do you think it's grown so much, Kyle?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons as to why the games have grown and how the games have gotten to where they are, not the least of which is the fact that it's hosted here in St. George. And, the community has definitely always rallied around the event. We've got a great pool of volunteers that we can draw from, expertise that we can draw from. We've also got easy access to a number of national parks. Zion National Park's just a few minutes away, and when people come, they just feel the spirit of it. They feel the spirit of the event. They feel the spirit of the community and what's going on, and thankfully, for them and for us, when they come and experience it, they like to come back and keep experiencing it.
So, Kyle, I've heard about John Morgan, and I've heard about John Huntsman. John Morgan, you said, was the founder. How did John Huntsman and the Huntsman Cancer Institute and the Huntsman Foundation, how did they get involved in the
that's a great question, one that we're often asked. And it's kind of an interesting story. The games happened in 1987. The very first one took place that year, and they had some rough patches and they had some challenges that they worked through and that they overcame. And by the time it was over, they decided, we're just crazy enough to try this thing again. And so with that in mind, they said, let's make it happen. We've committed. Let's move forward. And they knew that one of the things that they needed was a principal sponsor who could kind of come on board and get behind it. And so John Morgan made an appointment with John Huntsman, and he went into his office one day and just kind of sold him on this concept of a senior sporting event down in St. George. And John Huntsman just really loved the idea. He's always been about health and wellness. Always been very interested in research on how people's lives can be better through health and wellness and being engaged actively. And he just really got behind this event. And from then on, from 1988 until today, the Huntsman family and the Huntsman Corporation has continued to be the title sponsor of the event. So the event itself is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, but the Huntsman family and the Huntsman Corporation has been the title sponsor, hence the name, the Huntsman World Senior Games. And they continue to this day to be hugely supportive, not just financially, but morally behind it, and just great support all the way. And we're grateful to them and appreciative.
We certainly couldn't do it without him. Hey, Kyle, Andy, as we're out in the community, we get asked a lot of questions about the game. So I thought it would be kind of fun if maybe we just threw some questions at Kyle that we get and let Kyle answer them for the listeners out there. So I'll go ahead and start. So Kyle, what is the mission of the Huntsman World Senior Games, and how is that mission accomplished?
The mission of the Huntsman World Senior Games is to foster worldwide peace, health, and friendship, which it's huge, if you think about that, and especially if you encase it within that idea of starting in 1987 with a couple hundred athletes and a handful of sports. That was pretty ambitious. But that is the mission. That was the mission then, and it continues to be the mission today. And everything that we do around the office, when we decide if we're going to do it, or if we decide that we're going to shelf the idea, it always revolves around that concept of, does it foster worldwide peace, health, and friendship? And we feel that in so many ways the games does just that. We feel that if you can put all the politics aside, put all the wars and the conflicts and the various things that go on in our world, if you can put those things aside and just get people together, and they can realize that people are people, and that I can be friends with anybody in this world, that we have a chance at peace. And we feel that the games helps that to happen. It helps bring people together, helps them get together, and again, we feel like that is helpful.
And I know a couple of years ago, a Russian volleyball team came, and they played, Americans and Canadians, and it was just really cool to see these guys getting along and hugging and being friends, even though there's some political tension right now.
Absolutely. We've had all kinds of stories like that. In fact, just to even bring it even to a more contemporary standpoint, we host a World Championship volleyball tournament that we call the Global Cup in the middle of our games. And this year, in October, we are going to have a Russian team, as you mentioned, Andy, and we're also going to have a team from the Ukraine.
Wow.
So you talk about contemporary issues that are out there in the world.
That should be interesting.
And yet at the same time, we've been able to observe so many times that you can set that aside and engage in a sporting activity and walk off the courts the best of friends. So we really feel like we have a shot at peace.
Now, Kyle, you mentioned that it was the largest annual multi-sport event in the world. What does that mean? How big is it in size?
Just before we jump into that, let me talk about health and friendship, which is the mission statement. Just to wrap things up really quickly, we talked about peace. Health, I think it's apparent. The Huntsman World Senior Games is all about health. If you can stay active and engaged in your lifetime, whether it's in your early years or in your later years, you're obviously going to have better health. And then the friendship aspect of it goes right along with the peace part of it as well. But we really have athletes that come, looking for their friends that they made here at the games. And so how we fulfill our mission statement, we feel that it's accomplished very well through just the putting on of the event.
Yeah.
And the biggest in the world is a great question. We get that a lot of times. What does that mean? What does that mean? Well, we host about 10,000 athletes when the games are going on. A few hundred more than 10,000 athletes. And just to put that into perspective, As I mentioned, it's the largest of its kind in the world, but it's a pretty big event, period. It's about the same size as the Olympic Games. So if you think about, how the Olympics come together and how the world gets behind that and comes together during the Olympic Games, well, we get a chance to do that here in St. George on an annual basis every single year and bring that many people into the community.
So you're saying that there's the same number of athletes that compete at the Huntsman World Senior Games as compete at the Summer Games?
Give or take a few. The Summer Olympic Games. The Winter Olympic Games are a little bit of a different story. There are fewer athletes that compete at the Winter Olympic Games. In Sochi, they had somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 athletes. Every year we get to host 10,000 right here in St. George in our game. So it kind of puts it in perspective.
That's amazing.
So we talked a little bit about the friendship aspect of the games, or the world peace. Just speak for a minute about the number of countries and where the global domination. That's a catchphrase this year at the games. Talk about that.
Well, that's another great question, and we call ourselves the Huntsman World Senior Games with an emphasis on the world, and we feel very strongly that we live up to that title. It's not just one that we give ourselves because we thought it would be cool or because we think that it's neat. We actually do welcome the world into the games and into the community when it takes place. Over the past 27 years, coming up on 28 years, we have hosted 66 different nations at the Huntsman World Senior Games, which is a pretty significant number. If you look at a world map, and if you were to color the countries that have come to the games, if you were to color them red and left everything else in gray, for example, you would see that that's a lot of countries. That's a lot of countries. And Jeff, you mentioned the world domination, which is one of our little catchphrases that we throw around the office at the Huntsman World Senior Games. Our goal really is to bring this mission of fostering worldwide peace, health, and friendship to the entire world. And our goal is to host at least one athlete from every country in the world over the next several years. So if you know anybody specifically from Argentina or from Greenland, let us know, because we'd love to host athletes from anywhere around the world, and we'd like to issue a personal invitation. And we feel that this mission is important enough and big enough that we want it to be spread everywhere. So when we say world domination, we're talking about dominating the world and spreading this idea of peace, health, and friendship everywhere that we go.
Very cool. So I'm imagining I'm driving down I-15 or driving home, and I'm thinking, well, I'd love to be in the games, but you've got to be 65 or 70, right? What age could I get in? I'm 41.
Another common misconception that we run into, and Andy, at 41 you're a little too young, but at 65 it's definitely right in the middle of where our average age is at. So in order to participate in the Huntsman World Senior Games, you have to be 50 years old.
Okay.
Now some people say, oh, but at 50 I'm not a senior, and the thing that I like to say about that, and the analogy that I like to use, is no one's ever disappointed when they're a senior in high school or a senior in college or
Right.
a senior vice president of the bank. I mean, those are prestigious. Those are prestigious titles.
It's a good thing, yes.
And we like to feel that the senior games is the same thing. It's just a way to classify a division of athletes, and it just happens to start at 50 years old.
They're at the highest level of their category. They're the senior games.
That's right, the best of the best, and we'll take them all at all skill levels.
Well, Kyle, just for a minute, we're starting to run a little bit short on time, but there's something I do want to know a little bit about. Where do the athletes come from? Can you give us a little bit of a demographic idea of what the athletes look like?
Yeah, as I said, we pull athletes from all over the world, and 66 countries over the past 27 years. On any given year, we're hosting somewhere between 23 and 27, 28, 29 countries. So they really come from all over. But here domestically, we host athletes traditionally from every single state in the nation as well. And a lot of people say, oh, wow, every state, even Alaska and Hawaii. And yeah, we do have athletes from Alaska.
They are considered part of the states, right?
Yeah,
okay,
Alaska
right.
and Hawaii. In fact, Alaska and Hawaii is kind of one of those, the two areas where we actually do pull athletes from fairly easily and fairly regularly. It's Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, some of those states that are really tricky. But over the past 7, 8, 9, 10 years, we have hosted an athlete from every single one of the 50 United States.
Wow.
And the majority of the athletes, as you might suspect, come from the kind of the Mountain West and the Pacific West as well. We have a lot of athletes that come from Utah. We have a lot of athletes that come from California, from Arizona, from New Mexico, from Washington,
Canada. Canada's a big
from
place.
those
But
from
that's
those
not
areas.
a state. That's another country.
Oh.
Just
But
quickly,
we do have a lot of athletes from Canada. That's true.
Just quickly, what kind of money do they bring into the local market?
You know, one of the main reasons why the games started was to be an economic driver. It's an economic driver for the community, and we've always been proud to play our part in that. And last year, we estimate that for the direct economic impact for the community was in the area of about $15.2 million.
Wow.
Now, are there any multipliers in that?
That's $15.2 million new dollars that came into the community, and as we know, if you're watching economic impact, those dollars bounce around a number of times. An athlete might come into the community, pay for a hamburger at a restaurant. That restaurateur pays his employees, who takes their money and pays rent. That landlord takes his rent money and goes to the tire shop and buys new tires for his car, and so forth and so on. So 15.2 new dollars that come into the community and get to bounce around. It's a pretty amazing economic driver for our area.
That's amazing. Now, you mentioned earlier 28 sports. I'm thinking, backgammon or something like that. What are the sports, or what are some of the biggest sports that come?
Well, 28 sports this year. It's a lot to offer, and almost anything that you can think of that's a sport we're offering. We offer the traditional Olympic-style sports, the track and field, swimming. We've got basketball. We've got soccer. Our biggest single sport for the Huntsman World Senior Games is softball. And in addition to being the largest annual multi-sport event in the world for athletes 50 and over, we also host the single largest softball tournament for athletes 50 and over, and we'll host over 300 teams, sometimes as many as 330 to 340 softball teams at the Huntsman World Senior Games. Our second biggest sport is right behind that, and that's volleyball, and we host about 200 volleyball teams during the games. Our biggest individual sport is pickleball. And this year, we opened registration on the 1st of March, and by the 24th of March, so 24 days into registration, we had already reached our participation cap for pickleball. So unfortunately, pickleball is closed at this point, but it's a real indicator of how fast the sport grows and how excited people are to be involved in the sport and involved in the games.
Well, Kyle, there are only a handful of people that are paid to make their living working for the games, helping this event happen. Can you speak a little bit to the volunteers?
Absolutely. The only way that this event happens, the only way for this event to take place here in this community is by the support of the volunteers. And we have an incredible army of volunteers that come together, that help us out, that help us put on this event. We have about 2,500 local and non-local people who get behind the event and help us out in a variety of different ways. Everything from helping us keep score at some of our events, sometimes officiating, although generally our officials are a little more trained, but everything from keeping score to providing refreshments to our athletes, to driving them around with our transportation crew and committee, to welcoming them to the Dixie Center when they arrive into the community and check in at our check-in hub. They really just get behind and help us out. All of those 28 sports are directed by volunteer sports directors. So you can see that there's just huge involvement from the local community in the volunteer area.
I know we couldn't do it without the volunteers. It's amazing to me the love that they have for the games. We have directors, sport directors, and volunteer committee chairs who have been with the games since the very beginning. That is dedication. That is amazing.
You think about 27 years, coming up on 28 years of volunteering for something, whatever it is, anything, whether it's the games or anything else. That's a pretty big commitment, and we've got a number of our volunteers who have rallied around and been involved in that.
I'll often see people around town wearing a volunteer shirt, or they'll see me wearing my games shirt, and they'll say, "Oh, I volunteer at the games. I love it." So
It's kind of like we're a family. It's kind of like we're a family.
So if one of the questions that I have people ask me all the time, and I know we're kind of short on time, is the games are 2 weeks. I mean, you put on the games for 2 weeks. What do you guys do all year around?
Well, the games do take place over 2 weeks in October, and so that's hectic, crazy time for sure, no question about it. But months leading up to the games really becomes kind of hectic, crazy time, and year round we kind of have a cycle that we work on. We start out at the beginning of the year by opening up our team registration, and so we have to make sure that our website is up to date and updated and has all the correct dates and information. We don't own any venues. We're blessed to live in this community, and we're able to take advantage of so many venues that are available to us. But we have to schedule all those venues every year. Even though it's an annual event, we still have to make sure that we schedule with all those venues. We do marketing year-round. We do athlete recruiting year-round. And we've got several publications that we work on as well that take time to put together too. So lots is done to get into the event.
Well, you look at the Olympics, it's a one-time event, but they've got years to get ready for it, and it's about the same number of athletes that we're dealing with. Now, granted, they're building venues and stuff, but they've got years to get ready, and we do it every year.
We do it every year in this community.
That's right.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's just about all the time that we have. Well, actually, maybe we have time for one more quick question.
One more quick question. Are we limited in the number of athletes that we can take?
Okay, now that is a good question, one that I'm often asked. And right now, the answer to that is no. Obviously, we have an infrastructure in the community that we've got to take advantage of, how many hotels there are and things like that. But right now, we're still in growth mode, and we're looking to expand and to grow. And we hope that will be the case. And we want to invite you to come out and be a part of it as well, as an athlete or as a volunteer. Don't forget to join us next Thursday at the Huntsman World Senior Games Active Life. We're going to have a very special guest, a former Harlem Globetrotter, and one of the very few people who has been to all 27 of the past Huntsman World Senior Games. He's what we affectionately refer to as a 100%er, and he's an all-around great guy. His name is Cal Dilworth. He'll be sharing with us stories and experiences, and you won't want to miss that. For more information or to register as an athlete for the Huntsman World Senior Games, visit www.seniorgames.net. Or if you have any questions about the games or today's show, or if you have any suggestions for future shows, be sure to send us an email at activelife@seniorgames.net. That's activelife@seniorgames.net. Everything spelled out. And remember, in the immortal words of the great Irish playwright George Bernard Shaw, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. Because we stop playing. Because we stop playing.